Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lit Chick on a Mighty Blaze. I'm Jenna Paone, and I'm so thrilled to welcome the fabulous Meg Mitchell Moore here today to talk about her new book, Vacationland. Hey, Meg, how are you? Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, we love having you here. Meg was part of our original Beach Read Bash, like way back in the day in 2020, right? You were part of that, I believe. And like, yeah, and and I just love seeing, love always reading your newest books. And this one might be my favorite yet. It's so great. It's like honestly 10 out of 10, perfect summer read. So good. It has the perfect amount of like vacation escapism and emotional depth, which we'll talk about in a little bit. First, I just want to give folks just a little background on you and the book, and then we'll dive right into the questions. So, best-selling author Meg Mitchell Moore began writing as soon as she figured out that the cursive T and F were different and hasn't stopped since. Her debut novel, The Arrivals, was published in 2011 by Reagan Arthur Books, then an imprint of Little Brown. Her newest novel, Vacationland, is her seventh. Before turning to fiction, Meg worked as a freelance journalist for a variety of business and consumer magazines, where she often managed pitch stories involving dogs. Before that, she worked on the staff of a family of technology magazines. Meg received a BA from Providence College and a master's degree in English literature from New York University. She, her husband, their daughters, and their golden retriever live in the beautiful coastal town of Newburyport, Massachusetts. Of Vacationland, People magazine says there's sun, sea, and major drama. You'll be carried away. Vogue.com calls it irresistible. Publishers Weekly says it's delectable. Readers are in for a treat. And Kirkus Reviews calls it engrossing. A truly lovely tale of families, love, mistakes, forgiveness, and yes, happiness. And in my favorite blurb quote ever, Amanda Iyer-Ward, of New York Times bestselling author of The Lifeguards and The Jet Setters, calls it as sophisticated and delicious as lobster bisque, which perfect description for this book. I love it, especially for a Maine book, of course. Very clever there. Thank you so much again, Meg, and congratulations again on Vacation.
I need to update my website. We actually have 2 golden retrievers now. So we got a puppy. I wish I had. Was here. The puppy's upstairs, but I gotta remember to update that. 2 golden retrievers, but everything.
There are 2 golden retrievers, folks, and that is the most important thing. More dogs, always more dogs. Meg, I love this book so much. Can you tell us a little bit, without any spoilers or anything? Of course, we never do that here. Just what the basic premise of the book is, sort of your elevator pitch, and what inspired you to write it.
Sure. This book, unlike, I've never done this before, but this book was inspired by an actual house. So the house that you read about is the summer home of one of my very best friends from forever ago. I've known her since high school for 100 years. And her family has this summer home on right on the water in Alice Head, Maine, looking across the harbor at Rockland. And I've been going there as a visitor for a long time. And I have always thought it would be the perfect setting for a book. So in this book, the house came first, which I don't think I've ever done before. Maybe I've thought of a town or, decided on a setting before, but never a house like this. So I sort of picked the house first, and then I picked the family that would live there and the situations that would happen. Without going into too long of a story, I wanted to write a thriller.
This is not a thriller, folks. This is decidedly not a thriller.
And there's these rocks in the water, and so I put a dead body on the rocks, and I thought, oh, this is going to be so good, and it's all going to tie up in the end. And I had the family, some of the situations that are there now, but they were all related to the dead body. And my editor got back to my agent after I wrote a few chapters and said, I like everything but the dead body. And the detective, I had a detective. She said, I don't like the detective and I don't like the dead body, but I love the family. I love the house. So it ended up being a very different kind of book. So I had these situations. There's the family, as you mentioned, and there's the matriarch and patriarch. Yep. The patriarch is a former Maine State Supreme Court justice who's suffering from Alzheimer's. Yep. And then his wife is this sort of longtime protector and caretaker. Yep. Their daughter, who's 39, almost 40, comes with her 3 young children from Brooklyn for the summer. So now we have the 3 generations in the family. Yep. And then there is the stranger who comes to town, who's a young woman named Christy, who's about 10 years younger than Louisa, the daughter. And she has a connection to the family that we don't find out until later in the book. So that all sort of got pieced together. There's no dead body anymore. There is a dead seal in one of the early chapters, because I wanted these kids to discover something on the rocks. So I kept trying to have it be a body. And I even had subsequent drafts, I had sort of a tangentially related body that tied up, and everybody said the body doesn't make sense here. So no body, just a seal and a family generational story.
I love that. So that's so interesting. Like I love hearing the evolution of it. So number one, let's backtrack a second. So you started with the place, which you said was different from you for you.
Mhm.
So that is like, I'm a very setting oriented person. I tend to like pick the place first, and especially like the house or whatever. Like this is where this happens.
Mhm.
What usually comes first for you? And was this a very different, like did you have to think about this whole project differently because you started in a different place than you usually do?
Sometimes it is the setting, but not necessarily as specific as a
Yeah.
house. So I think for Two Truths and a Lie, I knew before I knew the story that I wanted to set it in the town I live of Newburyport,
Yeah.
Massachusetts. Sometimes it's the characters, and sometimes it's the situation the characters are in. It's almost never the plot because that's the part I'm the least good at, is the plot. So that has to come later after I figure out who these people are and why they're here. So never the plot, or rarely the plot, not usually the house, sometimes the setting, and sometimes a character will pop into my head and I'll figure out who they are and why they're here and who else should be involved in their story. So it happens all different ways for me. I don't have a set way to do it.
That's very cool. I always just love hearing about the process behind. And so then with this house, so this is a house, this is of course not your friend's family by any means. Well, we want to say that is, these are not real people.
Right.
But the house itself, as you said, was based on this house where you have a connection to the family. What is it about this house that inspired you? Because I mean, like honestly, in reading it, everybody's going to want to buy this house and live in this house.
Right. I know. It's a
People are
beautiful.
going to get a lot of, not that anybody knows where the house is, but I assume anyone who goes in the Rockland, Rockport, Camden area is going to be like, where can I find this house? Because it seems it's like the perfect summer, like
There
family house. Like,
there are a lot of hidden houses down these roads. So it is down a road. I'll say that. But there are many houses like that, and all in coastal New England, all over the place, on the Cape too.
Yeah.
There's houses everywhere, and family homes and homes with stories of the generations. So part of it is just the setting of the house because it's so beautiful. I mean, it's an older house. It's it doesn't have like the most updated bathrooms and kitchen. It's been around for a long time. It's had many, many people in and out, but it's got many bedrooms, so it can accommodate a lot of visitors, and it's got a really long dining room table that's probably, I don't know, might be 12 or 14. I've never actually counted. I think they can put a leaf in it. But anyway, and there's a picture window that looks out on the water from there. I've been to dinners there, but I know that so many dinners with different groups of people have just happened in this room. And that's so interesting to me. And the home is owned by different parts of the family. It was two sisters and cousins and different generations. And, as people pass away and it passes down, there's certain things that the family will have to figure out eventually. So all that stuff is so interesting to me. So I wanted to have an element of that. So a lot of it is just setting anything on the water, anywhere where you can look right out at the water. You can hear a foghorn at night. You can see the lighthouse blinking. It's so evocative, I think.
It's so magical, and it's so calming. Like as a reader, I don't know, like you feel like you're in that place, and and you're like, oh, okay, I'm in me. Like I feel like you do a very good job of establishing the place. Like I really viscerally kind of feel like I'm there, which I think is what a lot of people look for when they're looking for like a book. Especially this is why I love like summer books, because I feel like the sense of place is so strong, and it really helps me to like get in the frame of mind of summer and all of those things.
Yeah.
But going back, so then you said you wanted to write a thriller. So talk to me little bit about where the goal to write a thriller came from. And obviously we understand that the change came, you in the real world, we send things out to editors and agents, and we get feedback, and so you changed it. So what was that like for you to pivot, and like how do you were you just like, okay, I'll do this another time, like I'll do the thriller next time? Like I just think that's a really interesting decision. Like that shows a lot of like you were like, okay, and then you churned out this awesome book that is not a thriller, but a totally different book.
Yeah,
So
it was
a little
totally
bit more
different.
about
I mean, I'm
that.
not saying that it was going to be a good thriller, so that's one thing I need to emphasize. I don't really know how to do it. I really admire people who can do it. So I think that's where it came from. At the time I was reading, I love Lisa Jewell a lot. I love her books, and I love Tana French. And
Yep.
at the time I was reading, and I don't know if it's Tana or Tana. Somebody needs to tell me that because I can never remember. Do you know?
I don't actually know either. But if anybody knows,
Yeah.
please let us know. Is it Tana or Tana?
So I had just, a friend of mine, actually the same friend who owns the house, had introduced me to her. I hadn't known her for some reason. I had missed when her books started coming out. And I just went back and devoured all of her books over the period of maybe 2 years, usually on audio, because I love audiobooks that have an accent, and hers are mostly set, I guess they're all set in Ireland. So I was just going through them, and they're long, really complex books, but I couldn't get enough of them. And what I admire about her is she has these complex characters and situations. Oh, Tana. Okay,
Tana.
great. Tana, good to know. All right.
Thank you. I think our lovely producer, Julie, popped that in for us. So thank you, Julie Gerstenblatt, for
I'm glad
finding
that I've been saying it right. I have been saying that, but then all of a sudden I panicked that it was Tana. Anyway, so she has these complex characters. Even a lot of the characters are detectives or work in the police, but they have these backstories and these fascinating relationships, and these plots that are just so you could never figure them out until she unfolds it for you. So I admire that a lot. So I think I just had read so many books like that, and I thought, well, I'm good at character, so maybe I can just do that, which is way easier said than done. And it turns out I don't know if I can, because I never really finished it. But I think that was my inspiration. I thought, oh, I can take a setting and I can do this other thing with it. But I think it's a different skill. I don't know. I don't know if I'll do it someday. My publisher probably has enough people writing those kinds of books. That's the other thing. It's a business too. It's not just what you want to write. So they probably looked at, we have all these books coming out, and this is not what we want from this author. We want a different kind of book. And it turned out that was definitely the right call this time. We'll see. We'll see about the future.
Maybe in the future. Well, I love the book. The book is great. I was saying this behind the scenes before in the green room, but I just love your books because you're such a good writer on a structural level, on a broad overall level, and then on a sentence level too. Like I feel like there's a lot of art in your writing, and I appreciate that very much. There's so much emotional depth, there's so much complexity, and at the same time, it's you're still reading a summer book, because you're reading a character-based book. There's something very calming about it. You tackle a lot of very serious issues, but you do so in a way that is overall pleasant. In a way like you don't shy away from these harsh truths. You really go into them. And there aren't easy answers in your books. Not everything gets tied up, in a pretty little bow at the end. However, you seem to just strike that balance between the heavy and the light really well, in a way that for me personally is like spot on. For like my favorite type of book is a book that does that makes me cry in some places in a good way, in a cathartic way, but then also lifts me up at the end. How do you approach that as a writer? And do you ever do you find yourself wading into either the depths or the shallows more, and ever kind of have to balance that out? Like, I'm so interested in it.
That's a great question. I think a lot of that comes in the editing. So I can't even take all the credit, but I appreciate everything you said, because those are the books I like too, are the ones that balance the light and dark really well. I mean, Tana French does that really well because she's very funny, and Leon Moriarty does that really well. And some of the people that I really love can do that. And there's somebody else I recently forgot who it was, but I recently thought, oh, this person also does that so well, but I don't remember who it was. Might have been a TV show. But anyway.
It might not be a person at all. It might just be a TV show. We're good.
But I do admire that. So I think that's what I'm drawn to. So that's probably what I'm trying to do. In this book, I revised this book a lot. It didn't come easily at all. And my editor kept saying, you have these issues that you've brought up, but you're not going deeply enough into them. So in this book, I was tending not to do it, sort of like introduce the topics, but not really get into them. And my editor really pushed me. And thank goodness. I mean, we put this book off a whole year. So this book was to be published last summer. And 2 summers ago, that same summer we talked last, I was finishing my first or second draft. And that's when my editor said, listen, I think we should really step back and think about holding it so you could do a longer, more thorough revision. And
Yeah.
she said we could put it out right now, not right now, but we could send it to copy edit soon
Yeah.
and it will be fine, but it won't be as good as it could be.
Yeah.
So that was a hard decision, but ultimately I think she was right because we were able to go a little more deeply. A lot of it was the money issues. They were really not clear to me. They weren't clear. So I wasn't being clear to the reader. And I really had to go back and think about all those different things. So that was the right call. But I can't take all the credit because my editor is very good at saying you have too much of this and not enough of this, and you need to balance it. And a lot of that comes through revision. It doesn't come on the first try.
So then in that, I'm interested in, so the context, obviously you're writing this book in this crazy time that we've been going through that is never ending. And where the hits just keep on coming, more and more and more and more. And there's so much in this book that I think a lot of people, it's a very timely book in the sense of the issues that you're tackling are these ideas of who's responsible for what and for who. How do we go about correcting or not correcting the mistakes of past generations? How do specifically women right now kind of, I feel like we're in this insane time as women where our rights are being threatened on all levels, and there's so much going on. I mean, a lot of the book, I don't think this will give anything, too much away, but a lot of it is talking about Louisa's thoughts on, what's the balance in her family life and who does what between herself and her husband in caring for their 3 children. And, she looks at the role of her mother and what her mother did as in her role in the family and the context. And I feel like you do a really great job of exploring those issues in a very compassionate way that kind of looks at all these different sides. Was that part of maybe what was difficult, was like living this while writing this, like in the sense of like, living it collectively? Obviously you weren't going through exactly what, any of these characters, they're fictional people, but, with the backdrop of women struggling in the workforce and dropping out of the workforce in mass numbers to be the primary caregivers, like women who have major careers and are, suddenly thrust back into this different, we're thrust into this different reality. Was that part of it? Did you struggle at all with writing this during this time? And
yeah, that's a great question too. These are all such good questions. You're so good at this. I don't know if it was always conscious, but I think all of that was in the ether, as you say, during those, and still is, and obviously getting worse for women in a lot of ways every single day. But I think that I think I probably was living a little bit of what Louisa's living. I don't have, my kids are older and that sort of thing, but trying, as you know, trying to balance raising children and doing your career. And it can be, these are sort of perennial questions that are interesting and they pop up, I think, in many, if not all of my books. So I think those are just the things I'm always trying to answer for myself and for my friends and for other women. And I just never get tired of looking at those questions. So that's probably a lot of it too. But yeah, it's not getting any easier. It's getting, not at all. I don't know where the answer is.
Not even remotely. And I do think, it's such an interesting, like you really do explore so many things. I think your book gives people a lot to think about, previous generations from both we're at a time where we're rightfully kind of calling things out and sort of asking questions about things and structures that are in place and inequity in all areas. And we're also, I think it's important to look at the context of when certain decisions are being made. You do this through a family, which I love a complicated family. I love a complicated and dysfunctional, maybe, but ultimately lovable family. Clearly you do too. And, this is my favorite type of, I love a family focused book. What is it about family relationships and complicated family dynamics that you find intriguing and inspiring?
Yeah, I mean, it's just sort of this built-in complications because you are living with these people who may or may not be exactly like you. And you'll see too, as your daughter grows older, that you have these children, you're like, well, of course they'll just be exactly like me and we'll agree on everything. And how could it not be? And then you realize, oh my gosh, they're their own people who have their own agendas, even when they're tiny agendas about what they want to do for dinner and, whatever. It's all these thing. So it becomes so much more complicated than you ever imagine, I think, before you have a family. But even just being part of a family, you're dealing with that all the time too. Maybe you and your siblings are different, and maybe you and your in-laws are different, and all these sorts of clashes can happen. And you think, well, that wouldn't be us. We wouldn't fight about that. And then you realize, oh my gosh, we're all different people trying to come together in this sort of fabricated setting, and a lot of sparks can fly. So I think it's interesting. And I have a pretty small family. So, and actually the family in this book is small too. Louise is an only child. I have one sister. We have very few aunts and I had one aunt. My father was an only child. We just don't have a big family. So my husband comes from a big family, had more siblings, tons of aunts and uncles and nieces and nephews and cousins. And so those dynamics are interesting to me, maybe because I didn't have them that much, because my my family's pretty small. So I think I'm always kind of looking at what can happen among all these different people too.
That's so interesting. I'm the same way. We have a relatively small family. It was not always small, but there was a lot of like death and stuff when I was a child. There, the older generation, unfortunately, didn't kind of live very long. But yeah, and a lot of our cousins are a lot older, so like they weren't really I think not coming from it. Like I always wanted that crazy holiday thing where there's like 15 people in the house, and like now we kind of are like we're sort of getting a little bigger now as we have kids and stuff like that. But it's an interesting thing. And I'm going to take a question from the audience actually. Anissa, this is a great question. And thanks for joining us, Anissa. Anissa is so great. She's like one of our loyal attendees and readers and joiners, and we love her so much. What do you know now about writing that you wish you knew as an author just starting out?
Gosh, not as much more as I should. I don't feel like I know much more. I think I just know now to trust myself and trust the process. And in the beginning, I think it's easy to panic and say, if it's not working out, it will never work with any piece of writing, or with if you're looking for an agent and you're not finding an agent, or you have an agent, but you can't find a publisher. I'm not saying those things work themselves out, because they don't for everybody. But I am saying that now I understand, okay, all of my first drafts are bad, and that's how it's going to be forever. And that's okay, because I'll work on them and then they'll be better at the end. And I think so I think that would be what it is just for someone to say, just slow down. It's okay. Trust yourself. And everybody goes through these rough patches in the beginning.
That's nice to know. We all need to hear that. I need to hear that right now as somebody who's like struggling to get the novel finished with my baby. And I'm like, oh God, like,
Yeah. But
so for you, when you're getting that novel, so like now we talked about kind of how this, we talked about how the idea for this novel came. Do you have a process for writing? Because you said plot. I'm like you. Plot is like I'm like, oh, books need a plot. Like, why do books need a plot? Don't they just need characters that are like super interesting? Like, oh yeah, they have to do stuff. So for you, where do you start out when you do you just start like writing scenes? Do you make lists? Do you outline? What's your like actual process? Do you just write it? Are you just a pantser or a plotter? Like,
I am not a plotter. I wish I were a plotter. I would love to be a plotter because it seems really nice. But I've tried it. Doesn't work. Didn't work with the thriller. Didn't work. Just doesn't work for me. So I normally, now that it's a little different now that I have an editor who will look at, who's deciding whether or not she wants my book. So I know that I have to present her with, I don't know if it's 3 chapters or not an outline per se, but not even technically a synopsis, but just a sort of general, this book is about these people and here's what will happen to them. So I know I have to do that. And I know I have to have probably 3 good chapters even to sell the book. So I'll do that first because I have to. And then I will just dive right in, and I'm a mess. And I have multiple points of view in all of my books, and I don't always write in order. So I will just jump in and I will write usually 1,000 to 1,200 words a day that may or may not make sense, may or may not be chronological, may or may not have anything to do with what I wrote the day before. And then when I have basically enough words to make a book, then I'll look at it and say, oh, okay, this is sort of what I need to do next.
Yep.
Then I might outline it. So I typically outline after. So for my book that will come out next summer, I'm on the final draft. I wrote a draft. We revised once. This is the line edit stage, but I still have some bigger changes to do. so just today I started making another outline. So I've already outlined it a couple times, but now I'm re-outlining it to say, okay, what really is happening in this chapter and where are the holes? And then I'll write where the hole and what I need to fill in. And then I'll go back to the manuscript and I'll write those scenes or write those missing, whatever. And then I'll read it through again and then I'll see what's missing. So it's a lot of starting really messy and paring it down and down and down. I wish I outlined. Do you outline?
I try, but I always used to, when I started to work on this book, people were like, okay, give me an outline. And I was like, oh God, I don't know. Like stuff happens. Like I start with a scene. I like always think of a scene, and that's like the book has to come from that one scene. And it's usually the first scene. Really good at those first scenes. It's like, it's the end. Like I can write a killer first scene. It's just that it's just getting it to the finish line that's tough.
Yeah. And sometimes I'll even write that last. Actually, I think for this book, there's a scene between Louisa and her father, just a quiet little scene that takes place at the very end. I think I wrote that one pretty early on, and everything that led up to that changed, but I sort of knew this moment was sitting in the background waiting for them. So it depends. It's always different.
And do you think of yourself as, would you think of yourself as an overwriter or an underwriter? Like,
I'd say underwriter. I'm too impatient to be an overwriter. So I normally have to, I might overwrite within a sentence. My editor normally takes out a lot of extra words. That sort of thing. She recently, in this draft she gave back to me, she said, can you do a search for the word bereft and cut it down by 30%? She's like, it's a great word, but you really don't need to do that much. So I might overwrite a word or something, but plot wise, I don't. I more have holes. I'm more likely to have holes than I am to have too much, which is sometimes better because you have to write more, easier to carry.
Both are a curse. It's pick your poison, right? Like everybody like wishes they had the other side. Like,
exactly.
It's like, oh, I wish I could just be, a little more brief, or I wish I could, expand on this and be, a little more in depth. But I do think again, I want to repeat that, like on a sentence level, like you're such a good writer. Like I just I just love the way you write. I love, there, like even little things like, you're just one of those writers that like makes me think a lot about things in a different way. I know that there's a character who is from the South who's up there. She's a young girl and she's up for the summer. And you talk about the Southern accent and like the song and like just the way that like somebody would say something in a different like kind of cadence and a different sentence structure, and it makes me think you're really like you're in love with words in a way that I am. Like it's a sense of poetry in your writing, which I really love.
Thank you. Obviously, I think the fun part is the words and the sentences, and the hard part is what I think.
So obviously you were a journalist before writing fiction. So tell me, I want to know a little more about your writing history. So like you're a journalist. Was there a moment when you were like, okay, I'm going to go and write fiction? Did you always kind of have in the back of your head, I'm going to write novels someday? Or was there any other, did poetry ever play a role in your life? Or like tell me a little bit more about your journey to novels and what I'd love to hear about what was the moment that clicked for you.
Right. I always had it in the back of my head that I wanted to write fiction, but I wasn't brave enough just to do it. So that's a big thing. Actually, that's something I wish I had just been a little braver. I didn't understand how to do it. I don't have an MFA. So I did go to graduate school, but I got a master's of English literature because I thought I would be a professor. So I thought academic writing was my path. And I really liked that kind of writing. But there was a point when I thought, this doesn't, like, what am I going to get a job as a professor? There's so few jobs. And
there's like 2 jobs for an English professor.
No one's going to read all this stuff I'm writing. It just seems sort of like, I don't know. It didn't make, nothing against professors. They're wonderful, but it didn't make sense to me anymore. And I thought, I don't want to move around the country for a professor job.
Yeah.
So then I thought, oh, I'll go into journalism. Cause they were all sort of, I was dancing around the fiction, I think, in a way. And I really liked the journalism, and I'm glad I have that background, but I could have gotten a journalism degree. That probably would have been really helpful, but I didn't do that. I didn't really think that through. I just didn't really think it through. So I worked for mostly technology magazines for a long time. When I first moved up to Boston, and it was great. I had so much fun. There were a lot of young people there, and I was a copy editor at first, and then I was an editor. And even then I was dancing around the writing, because I remember the copy editor job was just the job I got. And I actually really love copy editing. I think it's so satisfying. So I did that. And then I thought, oh, I think I want to be an editor. And then So they moved me into an editor job. And then I thought, well, I think I want to be a writer. And then eventually they let me move over. And again, it was just sort of this weird, I didn't just say I want to be a writer. I had to kind of go really circuitously. And then I became a freelance writer for a while. And that's when I started writing different kinds of journalism and, doing whatever I could. And all the while I thought, well, I'll just write the fiction in the background, which very eventually I did, but not right away because I didn't know how to do it. And I thought I should publish short stories because that's what people do, but I didn't know how to write a short story. So I wasted some time trying to do that. So it was very circuitous. So anybody who's listening who thinks that you have to be on a straight path, you don't. You definitely don't.
What gave you the courage, do you think, to decide that you were going to really go for it?
I think I was just scared I was running. I was scared I was running out of time. And B, we invested when my daughters were very young. I think they were 1, 3, and 5. We invested for 1 year in an au pair who came to live with us so that, because it's hard anyway, having 3 kids, but I was writing more. I was doing more paid journalism work and I wanted to keep writing, but there's no way to do that without help, as you know. So we had an au pair for 1 year. And I said, okay, if we're making this a pretty big investment, I'm going to spend half of my work time on the paid work and half of my work time trying to write a novel, working on this novel. So I did that for that year that we had her. And by that time I had enough that I could sort of work with it. So I think it was probably fear that just motivated me. I thought I can't waste this chance, and it's not going to, if I don't do it soon, I'm never going to do it. And it was just sort of that. That was my motivation.
I love it. Fear is a powerful motivator. And yes, it makes perfect sense. One of the things again in the book that is very present is Louisa, one of your main characters, is a mom of 3, and she is struggling to finish a very important work project, and she is constantly pulled between 2 things. And of course, I always say this when I ask this question, because I hate when people ask this question, but I always ask this question because I'm genuinely interested as a new mom, like who, spent the first year, like, how does anyone ever even take a shower? Like, I don't understand how my brain is ever going to work again, how, and yet I do find that so many successful authors, our parents are like, they have these full lives and, and they get their work done. So for you, how does motherhood and your work intersect and influence each other? And kind of how do you, for yourself, from a scheduling standpoint, like, make it work? Like, I know now your kids are in school, so it's like,
now they're older. One's in college, so she doesn't even live here most of the year. And the other 2 are in high school, and 2 out of 3 can drive. So it's very different from where you are. But I remember those days really clearly. And I remember that feeling. I told you we just got a puppy. And for the first 3 weeks, I was like, how am I going to do this work again? And this is
puppy blues. Our wonderful founder, Jenna Paone, actually told me about the puppy blues when I was talking to her about my baby blues and PPD, experience. And she was like, oh no, that happens with puppies too. And then when my brother and sister-in-law got a dog, which they had been talking about for years and years and years, and my sister-in-law was so excited to get this dog. And then she was like, oh my God, I hate the dog. What did I do? And now of course they love the dog. But she was like, I forgot. And I was like, nope, puppy blues are a thing.
I know. It's funny. And it's obviously much quicker with the puppy. We've had him for 3 weeks and it's already so much easier. So now I'm like, oh yeah, I can write. Like I've got it figured out. It only takes 3 weeks with a puppy. It did bring me back to that feeling of I can't quite get to everything. How am I going to do this? So I remember that really clearly. So what was the question? But the funny thing is I also didn't have anything good to write until I had kids. So it's like I had the kids and had less time, but I had more to write about. So those sort of things had to come together just because all of my, not that all books have to involve kids, but all of my books typically do and have families. And so that was sort of what I needed as a motivator, but it also was more challenging. However, it also made me more efficient, I think. So I'm very good about not wasting time. I'm very good about when I know I only have 2 hours, I try to get done what I can get done. I do a lot in the early morning before people are awake. My teenagers now sleep late. So in the summer, so I have more time in the morning, so I can use my time pretty wisely, I think. But those struggles, I think, are perennial struggles. And I don't say that it's all moms, because it's not, and dads struggle with this too. But my husband just happens to have a job that demands more regular hours and demands travel and things that so I am home more. So I do more of the home stuff because I'm home more, and not because of the gender thing, but just because of how our jobs are different. So I struggle with that, as you know, still 19 years in.
We all do, right? Like that's
Mhm.
that. Do you have like a so do you have like a routine? Like, do you have like a usual schedule that you like to keep, or do you kind of mix it up
I do
depending on?
during the school year.
Yeah,
Summer is always confusing, even though, like I said, my kids are old enough to completely take care of themselves. I still find it confusing to have people around all the time, or someone's in the kitchen, or I don't know I don't know who's where. And so summers, I don't get as much done as I wish I did. But during the school year, when the kids are in school and the house is quiet, I try to work for, the better part of those hours. And I
mhm.
try to work in little increments of 25 minutes, take a little break, 25 minutes, take a little break, and do that until my time's up. And I try to do that most weekdays, and eventually I have a book, but it doesn't always work out that way.
Nice. I love that. I love hearing about that. I also love what you said about you didn't have, for you the inspiration came from having kids, which I think is a such a like it's such a simple and clear concept that like I kind of was coming from this thing of like it's all over once I have
Mhm.
kids, like
Right.
coming from different. I came from the dance, theater, and music industries where like it is like it's like okay, if you haven't like made it, like it's
Ah,
kind of over, but it's not, it's changing. And like I think we just need to talk about that so much more, of this idea that like at each stage in your life new inspiration presents itself, and like new ideas come, and every stage can be exciting, and there's not just this narrative of like okay, until this happens, like, and then life is boring, because it's not. Like my life is more like complicated than it ever was before, and complicated means interesting,
yeah,
like
really
it's
good point. Right. And even for actors, I feel like it's
yeah,
becoming,
same,
women playing much better roles in their 40s and 50s than they
yeah,
ever did before. So that's all
yeah,
changing, which is fantastic. But you're right to acknowledge that and just say, okay, this is the stage where I am now, and what can I do
yeah.
with it? It's so much better than, oh my God, I missed all my chances. I missed all my chances, because that's not productive.
No, not at all.
True.
We have another great question from the audience. Sharon, another one of our favorites who we love,
Hey, Sharon.
who's a regular member of our community. Sharon says, or how did you come up with the title? Oh yeah, let's say,
That credit goes also to the same friend whose family owns the house. My friend Margaret, I'll just say her name. She and my other friend Jennifer, we spent a lot of time up there, and particularly 2 summers ago, that COVID summer when you couldn't go anywhere else, we had a couple of visits up there, and up in the house, and I was working on the book, and we were hanging out, and so we were sitting on the porch that overlooks the water, and we were just brainstorming, and because I think we had come up with a couple titles, and I sent them to my editor, and she said either she liked him and her boss didn't like him, or we weren't quite there. So we just sat down and brainstormed everything having anything to do with Maine. And my friend came up with Vacationland. And all of us, I mean, that was the perfect title. And I hadn't thought of it. It just was perfect. And then I thought, how is there not already a book named this?
right?
And I
So
mean,
for those of you who don't know, Maine, like that's one of the nicknames for Maine.
the motto, right.
Is vacation land. Like that's like
It's
beach.
on the license plate. Yeah. So this is back there, if you can see it. It's a little license plate my parents had made for me.
Oh,
For my initials, and 7 for number 7, and the motto
oh,
Land, and that's what the license plates look like.
that's
So,
super cute. Oh, I love that. And then so obviously this book takes place in Maine, Rockland, Rockport, Camden, which is such a beautiful area. And most of your books, with the exception of the admissions, I think,
mhm.
take place in New England, and that's in Northern California, right? And then
Yep,
um,
that's the only one.
but you've explored a lot of different, like rather than sticking to one place, you explore a lot of different uh, New England locales. Some like your hometown right now of Newburyport, Massachusetts, and you've done Block Island and Vermont. Clearly, like New England inspires you. Um, was that present from the beginning? Like, did you kind of say, I want to write stories about people in New England? Or did you just kind of start with, okay, I'll write it here because this is where where I know.
Yeah.
And as that evolved, like, I'm so interested in hearing, did you think about yourself as a New England writer? Because like, I think of you as a New England writer.
Right. Yeah. And I think that is the reputation now, which is interesting. So
Yeah.
no, I didn't start out that way. I set my first novel, The Arrivals, I set in Burlington, Vermont, because that was the last place we lived. We were living in Newburyport when I wrote it.
Yeah.
So it's just a place that I was familiar with, but I wasn't living there.
Yeah.
And so that took care of that. And then all of a sudden I realized I set most things in either a place I have lived or was living. Newburyport, I hit twice. But Block Island, I don't live in Block Island and never have. So that was a new place I had to discover. And that time I don't remember. I think I was just looking for a setting I hadn't tackled yet. And I wanted to stick to New England because I wasn't just all of a sudden going to become a Midwestern writer. I'm just not familiar with the parts of the country. So then I became familiar with Block Island, and I'm setting at least one more book there, I think. So, long story short, what was the question? Oh,
do you think of yourself as, I guess you answered it basically, but do you think of yourself as New England?
I do now. And I think and we also have moved a lot. I mean, I moved a lot growing up because my father was in the Navy, not in New England. I mean, we were a little bit New England, but we moved a lot. And as adults, we've also moved more than I expected to, although we've now been here in Newburyport a long time. But we did. Oh, and the captain's daughter was based on a place I lived during high school. So I just have moved around a lot, often in New England, and I have familiarity with a bunch of different places. So I figure, why not use it?
I love that. As I said to you backstage, The Captain's Daughter was actually the first book of yours that I read, and I loved it so much that I was like, oh, I have to follow this person, and I have to make sure I follow this writer, and it's another great, all of your books are so great. They're all so wonderful.
That makes me happy because that book, we were sort of in transition with an editor leaving her job. I feel like that book got a little bit forgotten or unnoticed just because of where it came out in the publisher. And I worked so hard in that book. I tried to write it times, and I love it too. So thank you. And I love when people tell me they read it because I don't think that many people read it, to be honest.
Everyone, please go out and buy The Captain's Daughter. Can we make this? Let's have the Ellen Hildebrand, the Bistro becoming #1 after years later. Let's do that with The Captain's Daughter because it's such a good book. It's and especially a great read after Vacationland because it keeps you in Maine. It's this you get more of that. You stay in the Maine frame of mind.
You do. That's true.
And I want to point out too, Newburyport has a fabulous the Newburyport Literary Festival, which we at the Blaze have partnered with. They were our partner for the Beach Read Bash that we did in 2020, and we love them, and they do such a great job. Jen Entwistle and co are so wonderful, and Newburyport is such a great place to visit. Hopefully, you guys will be back in next year in person for fully in person, or maybe there might be some hybrid virtual options too. But for those of you who haven't been to Newburyport, it's such a great place. Meg, what do you love about living in Newburyport?
Oh my gosh, I love so much about it. I love that we're near the beach. In the summer, I love that we're near the beaches. We have so many different kinds of beaches around us. We're near Plum Island. We're really close to the New Hampshire beaches and Salisbury, Massachusetts. So you can go to downtown Salisbury at night and just see this whole sort of a little bit of a grittier scene. And you can go to Jenna's Beach in New Hampshire and this beautiful, pristine, long beach that goes on forever. And you can go to Plum Island, and it's very different feeling out there too. So I love that. But we also have a state park. We have Maudsley right near us. That's only a mile from my house. So you can hike and run, and you can do so many outdoors things. And it's a real community. So it's small. It's, I don't know, 18,000 maybe. It's pretty small. But I did not, as I said, I didn't grow up. I moved a lot. So I didn't grow up in a hometown, and I love that my daughters have a hometown. So this is where they have lived almost all their lives, almost all, all three of them. Yeah. And this is their hometown. And so I just really love that we were able to give that to them because I think it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And also let's talk a little bit about Maine once more. Rockland, Rockport, and Camden. Some things about, we just got the best comment. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt myself and show us the puppy.
The other friend who was sitting on the porch that day. Puppy's sleeping, Jennifer.
Sorry, we can't see that today, but I'm sure you should follow Meg Mitchell Moore on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. I think the puppies are all over Meg. Yeah. I'm sure they are. You gotta follow along and see. You got to show the animals right on social media. We need the fur babies. We
definitely
need them. Sorry, back to Maine, Rockland, Rockport, and Camden. Some of your favorite things. What's your ideal day in that area?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Whew, a lot. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the house is actually in Owl's Head, which is sort of a little hamlet
Yeah.
across from Rockland, and I love just that little area. There's this general store called the Owl's Head General Store that you can go in and get. They've changed ownership in the past few years, and they have pretty amazing food, really good egg sandwiches. I've heard the pizza's great, and little gifty things you can buy. So I think stopping there in the morning is a must. And then you can go down to the Owl's Head Lighthouse, and I guess you can climb up. You climb up a bunch of stairs. I don't think you go in the lighthouse, and you get a beautiful view of all the harbors.
Mhm.
So you can do that. That takes a couple, an hour or two. And then you can go into the town of Rockland, and there's a main street with tons of shops. And there's the Farnsworth Art Museum, which appears a little bit in the book,
Yeah.
which is fabulous.
Which
Fabulous.
sounds awesome.
It's a great museum. Yeah, it's really good. And there's restaurant. I mean, there's so many restaurants. I think I haven't even been to half of them. I mean, there's one called Archer's that one of the characters works at that's right on the water. So that's fantastic. And there's good coffee, and there's ice cream. Actually, the best ice cream is in Camden at a place called River Ducks, which I think that's in the book too. River Ducks ice cream on this beautiful bridge. And you got to stop at Rennie's, which is where one of the characters works, which is this sort of, I don't even know how to describe it. It's a store. It's like almost like a department, like an old fashioned department store, but it's standalone.
It sort of reminds me of like the Vermont country store, or like, like it's sort of like if there was like a non, like it's not like a Target or a Walmart, like, but it's like it's like sort of a general slash department store,
Yeah,
but
it's
like
almost like a Woolworth back in the day.
yeah, well, that's like, yeah, that would be like my, yeah.
Yeah, and you can get camping gear, and you can get candy, and you can get really Maine specific foods, and that's great. So you can stop there. And one thing I haven't done is you can take the ferry from Rockland over to Vinyl Haven to this little tiny island, which I heard is amazing. And that's on my list every summer, and I haven't gotten to it. Have you ever done that, Jenna?
I have not, and I need to. And like one of my, like that, and I am like determined to take one of those the wooden sailboat, like the wooden sailboat, like trips, like that you can do like nights on a sail, like you can do like three to a week, like you can do a week on like a boat, like a wooden sailboat, and I really want to do that. I need to explore all those little like parts. Like I feel like I've gone mainland Maine, but I haven't done the islands.
There's a lot of islands.
I have a lot of islands
too. There's a bunch, and I think they're all really different from each other, but really, really cool. So that's all great. I mean, you can do kayaking out of Camden Harbor. You can climb up, I think it's Mount Batty. I haven't done that yet in Camden. There's so much more to do. I got to get up there. There's so much.
Everybody go. I love it. Meg, thank you so much. One more question. What do you hope that readers take away from Vacationland?
That's a great question. I want people to feel like they're on vacation. I really do. So I want people who cannot go on vacation this year or any year to feel like they are on vacation. So they get a piece of that. Yeah. And I want people who want a little bit more, to sink their teeth into some of the deeper issues of aging and grieving and that sort of thing, to find something there too. So I want people to get out of it what they're looking for when they go to it.
You have absolutely accomplished that. From my perspective as a reader, I felt that it was both a vacation and a real cathartic emotional experience. It was that right balance. 10 out of 10 summer reading should be on the top of your summer reading list. Meg, thank you so much again. Congratulations again on Vacationland. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everyone for joining us out there. And we will see you next time on Mighty Places.
Bye-bye.